There we go. What a big microphone you've got, Petros.
I've got the microphone because sometimes when I need to have, due to the circumstances and the pandemic, the whole thing, the interviews, and it was very difficult to go to the radio. So I've got a microphone here, complete.
Well, you have the professional DJ voice. You know, we're just. We got three guys here from Hartlepool.
Hey.
Let me introduce you, Petros. At the top there, you got Wilco. Say hi, Wilco.
Hi, Wilco.
I will go.
And then you got Mal Craggs sitting there looking very white.
Hi.
Hi, Mal.
And of course, we've got Alan Grange in sunny California.
What face?
I've got my other partner is sitting to the side. I've got this invisible friend called Granny. He's
it's Granny. Granny.
He's right next to me. You can't see him.
Okay. So, do you want to? I know that all of you're family. You are very close friends. So maybe due to Mark, and I want to thank Mark very much for this conversation tonight. Maybe I need to introduce me to yourself, to you. Is that clear?
Yes, good. That's good.
All right. Well, look, I was born in Athens, in Greece. I was involved in radio since from 1996 till nowadays, and I have a daily radio show in Hellenic radio broadcasting. And it is one of the most popular broadcasts on radio in general. And I have given speeches and lectures of music and the influence of world music in the West, collaborating with record companies, with Sony Records, with EMI, releasing and collaborate with the late Mark Murphy, his live album in Greece, participating in hundreds of live gigs in Athens, in Herodium, collaborating in Olympic Games and Special Olympic Games. And I have one of the largest record collections here in Europe, approximately 50,000 records and more than 300,000 records of 7-inch. And the last 15 years in Cosmos Radio in 96, I present and promote, among others, the genres of country music on a daily basis and the rock, of course. And I applied to be a member in the CMA in Nashville. And I hope before at the end of the year to choose me as a CMA voter and member, not American. And it was a wonderful opportunity talking with Martin a few weeks ago in Athens, talking and discussing the whole music and the history of touring in the late 60s. And it was fantastic. And I introduced myself to Mark. And today for me, it's a privilege to have this conversation with you. It's okay. At the end of 2018, I started to involve writing my first book, a book regarding to music, even to rock and jazz and blues scene, and how much music has infected by the political development in the United States, from the Pop Monterey Festival in 1967, even with the British invasion, till nowadays. And Mark gave me the idea when we are talking about the rock and roll rowdies. And I want to make a special chapter, a special place in the book, to talk about how important it is for the listeners and the audiences to know that the bands, the music, and even the successes of the tour, it depends on many factors. And of course, due to your experience of many years on the road and on the street, you have the opportunity to share unknown stories behind the biggest rock bands and behind the biggest rock historic events that you have taken place in the last 50 years. And I was wondering if you want to discuss something of all these things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
that's what.
No.
All right.
This is Maria, and she is
Greek.
She's Greek. She's from Athens.
Καλησπέρα. Είμαι μεγάλη φαν. Είμαι μεγάλη φan.
And she's a rock and roll rowdy.
Σε ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ.
Είμαι μεγάλη φαν. Άκουγα στην Αθήνα κόσμο, σας ξέρω, είμαι τεράστια φαν και ήθελα να πω μια καλησπέρα. Μόνο αυτό. Μόνο
Μη
αυτό.
φύγετε, μείνετε μαζί
What
μας.
needs to be done again?
Μείνετε μαζί μας.
The band, right?
Ξαφνιάζομαι
Great, stop taking the
ευχάριστα.
phone call.
Good.
He's a complete fucking wanker.
So anyway, let me just enhance what you already know about me and Wishbone.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you know I go back to before Wishbone was actually formed. I come from the same town as Martin,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was moving to London. I was getting out of town when I was 16. I'm moving up to London. The other guys have got similar stories. We all left our hometowns, and then when Martin joined up the Wishbone Ash thing and auditioned Ted and Andy for it, they hit the road and they wanted some help from me, so I jumped in with that. And as time went on, John Peel discovered the band. They got their first album done. These are all facts that you all know. But then it came to like going to the States, and I remember a meeting with the whole band and Miles Copeland, their manager at the time. And it was like, well, we're going to the States for a tour, but we can't take any crew. And Ted Turner just spoke up to me, and he said to Miles, if Hobbit doesn't go, I'm not going. I don't know what, but I mean, you know, that's where Ted and I were very, very close friends. And so I was very lucky to actually get on that first tour. And you could say the rest is history. But, you know, so I did a lot of work with those guys through the years in Connecticut. You know, it was helping out on the recordings. We did the remote recordings and then down to Florida. I did 10 years touring with the band at that time, of which I hooked up. Mal came to work with the band. Granny came to work with the band. Wilco never actually worked with us, but we were all friends with the Average White Band. And we've all worked with the Average White Band at some time or another, you know, so, but there's stories within the story, you know, so, I mean, would you like some background from each of us guys now?
I was wondering. We are talking with. I saw about something about Granny. You've been. I read that in 1974, Chip Mangool, the production manager of Woodstock, recruited you for participating by George Foreman and Muhammad Ali, the fight in Zaire. And
Rumble in the Jungle.
Mumble in the Jungle. And I was wondering, I was talking long time ago with Monsieur Parker about the event, because as you know, the event as an attendance with 60,000 people, and then everybody went inside. They won with Don King to arrange the fight, then to Jerry Macusi, who took the record label from the Showcase group, the Funny Our Stars, and the rest is history. And I was wondering, how was to be participating first time play music with the world's most watched live television broadcast, even with 50 million viewers, even in the live set with B.B. King and all the other guys?
Well, you got to imagine in the background, all of us are from very humble beginnings, right? And we're from white communities. So, you know, our hometown, Hartlepool, we had some Greek families maybe, and a couple of Italian, but it was, so you go through the experience of roadieing, and you start to broaden your horizons. And to be in Africa, the old Belgian Congo, 10 years after the riots and the Leopoldsville and Sharpsville shootings, you were very aware that this was the modern world meeting the kind of old African world. And the atmosphere was intense. Muhammad Ali was like a lightning rod. Everything was about Muhammad Ali and James Brown. And the concert was about taking American black music to its roots. So there was a huge undercurrent of social change and commentary. And there were James Brown was I'm Black and I'm Proud.
Yeah.
So we were part of more than just a concert. My assignment was basically one of the stage managers. It was nothing glorified. It was just we were taking care of all the bands. Each band had a different setup, and we would make sure that the Hammond organ was where it needed to be, the drums, and we were there all day, every day. But we were part of a huge experience. I've never forgotten it. I could talk for about an hour about all the things that happened. But
Go ahead.
Coming in from the airport, we arrived on an Alitalia 747, and this is like people are just the jaws are just looking at this thing. People that maybe don't even own cars, don't even have a house, and they're looking at the 747. We all come off there looking like typical 1970s rock and rollers, and we're going into town in the taxi. The taxi's held together with chicken wire. You can see the road through the floor. There's holes in it. People walking with pots on their heads. We're going to the Intercontinental Hotel. You kind of felt guilty. You thought, well, we're staying in absolute luxury. And the guy that was at the stage in the stadium, they had a big stage. It's all very professional. American audio crew with some European lighting people. And they had a big lighting rig, but it didn't have proper supports. There was just this big crane with chains, and they held the lighting rig above the stage. And he lived in a water tank. The driver of that crane lived in a water tank.
Wow.
It kind of custom, inventive. So we were seeing everything on the stage, from the big, powerful American acts to local African tribe troops. The Maasai warriors from King Solomon's Mines movie, the 7 foot tall with the white hair, they were doing dances on stage. The next thing would be the Fania All-Stars. Then there'd be a troupe from Nigeria, all village dancing. It was more than a concert. It was incredible. I could talk for hours.
Hugh Masekela said that from the time we started to organize the festival until the festival, and after the festival, it was very hard work. And I think that both lost about 20 pounds each.
Yeah.
It was very, very hard.
We all got sick. Everybody got sick because I didn't think, I was relatively new to international travel. I'd done some States and Australia, but I'd never been outside of the Western world, really. And so, cause I made the classic mistake of having a drink with ice cubes in it, as we all did. We all got dysentery. Everyone got stomach.
It's the same thing if you go to Asia. If you go travel to Thailand or to Indonesia, you never took the ice cubes. But I was wondering, Monsieur Parker said that one night when he made the rehearsal with James Brown, Muhammad Ali went inside to the stage and took and stayed to play in the drum. And he asked Monsieur Parker, how do I look like? And Monsieur Parker said, okay, I prefer to fight and not to play drums. He said, okay, Ali Bouma, yeah. So it was the same thing.
Yeah. Stick to what you know.
Yeah.
But it was an incredible experience. I'll never forget it. And I could do a whole chapter on it.
What about you, Wilco? About average white band and Allman Brothers. For me, Allman Brothers was the band that inspires me in so many cases. My friends listen to Rolling Stones and the Beatles and some others from Miles Davis. And I start from the Southern Rock, from Blackfoot, from Marshall Tucker Band, from Allman Brothers. After the Allman Brothers went to the Fillmore East, and when Mark said that you've been working with Allman at the early 80s, I was thinking about the Enlightened Rogues, and I was wondering what kind of people was Greg Olmar or Dickie Betts or Jamo or the others. How was the work like with Allman Brothers?
Well, for me, it was absolutely brilliant because I'm a rock and roller from England, didn't know much about Southern rock. And I was with the Average White Band for like 9 years, 8 years, whatever. And we split up in 1980. I was on my farm in Connecticut and I'm like, wow, I don't have any jobs. What am I going to do? And the phone call goes from a friend of a friend and it's like, hey, do you want to be the tour accountant for the Allman Brothers? And I knew them, but I didn't know the songs. I was like, yeah, okay. So when I met the guys, it was fantastic. I mean, I went straight into 20,000 seaters with the Average White Band, into 20 to 30,000 seaters with the Allman Brothers. And getting to know them, it was a lot of hurdles, as they say. Me being English, them being Southern, and literally they couldn't understand the fucking word I was talking about.
Like now, just
yeah.
like now.
But drugs, I've never seen so many drugs in my life. Cocaine was everywhere. And I got to deal with all that stuff. But working with Gregory was a bit tough because I threw Gregory out of an Average White Band gig in Hollywood when he was married to Cher.
You've been in the party. You've been in the party in Las Vegas.
I've been where?
In the party in Las Vegas when he collapsed.
No. When the first, well, let's put it this way: the first gig I did with the Allman Brothers was in Boston. I lived in Connecticut. It was 1980, so I just drove up to Boston, and I get to the gig and it's sold out. And I was their tour accountant, so I didn't have to do the day-to-day stuff. And all of a sudden, I get a call from the manager, and he goes, "We're playing tonight's gig without Greg Allman." So I was like, "What the fuck are you talking about? How can we do a show without Greg Allman?" 20,000 people. We had about 200 people wanted the money back. They just went along with it. And he was actually coming out of rehab. So the next gig, and this is my introduction to the Allman Brothers. And I'm like, rehab? Yeah. So he started getting his shit together. And 4 weeks later, Dickie Betts goes into rehab. So it was a continuation for about 6 months. And then we just literally toured for 3 years. It was fantastic. We had a lot of respect for each other. And I just, coming out of the Average White Band's comfort zone I had for eight, 9 years. And just like, it was just fantastic. It was just, I never knew what Southern rock was. And, we used to have, as you said, Marshall Tucker Band supporting us. And all these different country bands supporting the Allman Brothers. Tom Petty was there every other night he could be just to see the Allman Brothers. And it was fantastic. I was like, oh, that's Tom Petty, and Willie Nelson turned up. I mean, every country artist you can imagine was on stage with the Allman Brothers. And I was actually very proud I worked for them. And my biggest joke with Greg Allman, when I last saw him 15 years ago at the Hollywood Bowl, Granny's known as Alfie Noakes. Well, Alfie Noakes is,
we all are.
It's a joke. So we all Alfie Noakes. I was in there for 3 years. I wasn't Wilco. I wasn't Derek Wilkinson. I was Alfie Noakes. So Greg Allman's looking at me and he's like, I look exactly the same, but I got gray hair. And I went, Gregory. He goes, what? I went, it's Alfie Noakes. And as soon as I said that, he was like laughing. He was carrying on. And it was just a pleasure to work with 4 of the best musicians out there in that, in that era. It was just, I've heard stories and stories and stories. They were brilliant, about the drugs, the alcohol, but they got up there and they played their hearts out every night. The funniest one was when Bill Graham came to the gig in San Francisco, and he put a plate of cookies down at sound check. So we were all talking, and I'm talking to Bill and all that stuff. And I looked down and all the cookies are gone. And I went, and Bill goes, holy shit, that's for after the gig. So of course the cookies, right? So within 5 minutes, all my road crew and the band are like, they're fucking tripping, right?
Oh my God.
So Dickie Betts must have played for nearly 2 hours that night. And Greg's going, am I on next? I'm like, I don't know who the fuck's going on. Dickie was just playing, and the audience was going crazy. Then Butch Trucks got up. He did a few things. And JMO did a few things. Then Greg got up, and everyone walked up stage. I think it was a 4-hour gig, which was normal for those guys anyway, They used to do solos for 2 hours at a time. Yeah, so I was privileged and proud of the Allman Brothers, yes. And especially the Average White Band, of course. I learned everything from the Average White Band. You know.
I would like to ask Mole, when I read about the King Crimson, even then with Vinegar Joe and the Vinegar Joe, I read that everybody you've been working with Vinegar Joe and with Wishbone Ash, most of them you work in the Wishbone Ash. But I would like to stay about the Who and the final tour in 2000. And I make a research that the band, when it toured to US and the UK in 2000, in generally is the most favorite reviews, culminating in a charity show in Royal Albert Hall and then the Teenage Cancer Trust. And everybody said about the Who, about the Eddie Vedder, the Noel Gallagher, the Nigel Kennedy, and all the others. And I was wondering how difficult it is to be when you are a tour manager in that kind of level bands. What's the most important difficulties on may encounter in that kind of touring?
I found then that the most biggest problem is communication between the artists. They've been together so long, they're like a married couple. Pete Townsend, Roger Daltrey, they're like a married couple.
Mm-hmm.
They have the things they enjoy about each other, but they have these things that they don't enjoy about each other. And so communication is a big thing, I think. With all those major artists that I work with, I'd done a tour with Robert Plant and Jimmy Page. It was the same kind of vibe, you know, where they tolerate each other, they are friends, but they're stretched. So the friendship is stretched. You know, Robert wouldn't play Stairway to Heaven. Jimmy would play it every night. And it was the same with The Who. Roger would want to play songs and sing certain songs. Pete wouldn't want to play them. And it's communication between them. And I found that is, for me, what drove me out of music. Because I got in it because I loved music. And it seemed like these guys I fell out of love with music because of stuff like that. Why? And because these were my idols, you know, my heroes. And I'm looking at them thinking, you guys can't talk to each other. You can't agree on a set list. So please, you know, and that drove me out of music, although I loved it. The energy that The Who had on stage was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I could not believe what a good guitar player Pete Townsend was. What the energy that Roger Daltrey had as a singer, you know, and everything of that ilk.
It was the same like Peter Gabriel when introduced you to Genesis family?
Peter was a pleasure to work for. He was, for me, one of I still loved the music, and Peter was a joy and a pleasure to work with. He gave you something every day. You got pleasure back from Peter because he was so inventive, so creative. His musical knowledge. You know, I had the honor of working with Peter when he'd done the first WOMAD festival with the Burundi drummers and things like that. Now, I hadn't listened to people like the Burundi drummers before. So it was just an experience. And Peter opened my eyes to things like that. It's the same way Robert Palmer from Vinegar Joe opened my eyes to bands like Little Feat.
Yeah.
You know, who, you know, Lowell George, ex Frank Zappa, you know. So that was fantastic. And I got so much joy from working with these people because they opened my eyes to other avenues of music. Yeah, even Mr. Grange there opened my eyes to Granny, opened my eyes to classical music.
Yeah, that was
I
Alan
never
Grange.
listened to that
Same as me,
before.
same as me.
And then
That
he
wasn't
opened
Granny.
my eyes to it.
That wasn't Granny. That was Alan, the guy next to me.
That was Alan.
Alter ego.
Mal, have you ever been? You've been to Live Aid with Phil Collins or
Yeah.
Genesis? You've been in '85 with in the
With
Live Aid.
'85, I'd done both Live Aids with Phil Collins. I'd done London, Wembley Arena, first of all, which he'd done a solo performance, and with Sting. And then from there, we got on a helicopter to Heathrow Airport, Concorde to New York, helicopter to Philadelphia, where he performed with Eric Clapton and Led Zeppelin. You know, and it was just a fantastic. And then after the concert, back into a helicopter, back to New York. Next morning on Concorde, we were back home for lunch on Sunday in England.
My God.
Just unbelievable. Unbelievable.
My God. Mark, do you? I asked Martin long time ago, and he was talking about a trip that you've been to Texas, and there was a warehouse somewhere at I don't know, in the middle of nowhere, and you hear the band, somebody plays, some guys played, and you went upstairs and you saw the ZZ Top, the Gibbons, and Dusty Hill.
Yeah.
It was how was it looks like? Just
Well,
ZZ Top in the middle of nowhere.
Well, it was a field, basically. It was just a field with a truck, a flatbed truck. You know, with that was the stage. And ZZ Top were just coming up then. Wishbone were on the first or second tour. And I believe that was the gig that the hot dog man got shot for cheating on his wife or for cheating with somebody else's wife.
Too many hot dogs.
And that was Rock and Roll Widow. That's where Rock and Roll Widow came out of it. But yeah, I mean, it was just a grass field with, you know, you got all your lovely little Texas chickies running around, and you know, it's really funky, really funky. And we had an all Texas crew as well. The Shoko guys were all
Shoko.
Yeah, we've all worked with the Shoko guys throughout the 70s, you know,
And 80s.
and the 80s as well. Yeah. So I mean, I had a lot of connection with that. So yeah, we had a lot of affinity with Texas, but yeah, we had some dodgy gigs down there in the early days. I mean, it was pretty rough and ready. I mean, the organization was shit. You know, there was no big security or anything back then. You know, it was a field with a, you know, it was like a local festival, really, like a local festival, I guess. You know, but yeah, ZZ went on to commercialize and started using backtracks, and you know, the rest is history. You know, they got real big with their sort of disco-y type hits, which were great as well. You know, you got Legs and, you know, Smart Dress Man, all that stuff. They were all great tracks and great videos. Yeah.
What was the where was the most productive moments period in your career? I ask all of you because everybody has this particular time that this period was most productive in other way. So what was the most productive moment in your career?
What significant moments? You know, I think going to America for the first time was the most significant, you know, trip. You know, that was like going to another planet.